All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Church Digital. We are doing a special live stream. I want to call this episode 344. Numbers escape me. We actually were talking about this yesterday on the normal stream. Like I lose track of numbers these days, but I am very excited about the conversation at hand. We're bringing on maybe, I started to call him the father of like modern church movement, but I don't know if that's weird anyway, we're bringing on Alan Hirsch into the conversation. Very excited about Alan, a visioneer for many church multiplication organizations and movements, and really just an inspiration to me in general. And we're going to get into some things. Alan's been a supporter of digital church, of digital missionary for a while, and really what we're going to get into today is the heart of digital. What's the role that digital plays in incarnational ministry? Now, right there, that question already escapes my general knowledge, consensus knowledge. So probably we're going to start the conversation with, hey, Alan, what exactly is incarnational ministry? And then we'll get into the deep end of the equation because, I just ain't that bright. But hey, while I ain't that bright, we do work a little hard here with the Church Digital, and I've been promising this. So the Church Digital, we did a digital missionary conference back in early April 2nd, and had 1,100 people show up day of from 80 some countries around the world. An incredible online conference, super excited about it. And of course, when you do one thing well, you've got to build on that. And so we had announced that we were doing a fall digital missionary conference. And so we didn't just want to stop at one missionary conference. We are doing 4. We're doing a series of summits for the digital missionary conference in September and October. And I told everybody that we were going to tease them. We're going to come up with the titles. We're going to announce them today. And so I am a man of my word. We're going to get to Alan Hirsch in 1 second, but I told you we're going to be rolling out the new Digital Missionary Summit series, the series of conferences we are going to be doing online, 100% free for anyone and everyone around the world this fall. And so, someone somewhere has got to have a drum roll happening. Jesse Carbo is not doing one off camera right now, even though I wish he were. But let's just go ahead and roll this out. We are doing, thank you, Jesse, too little, too late. But we've got 4 of them coming up. First up, let me see if I can zoom in. Can I zoom in? Yeah, there. First up, we're doing on September 17th, Digital Neighborhoods. Discipleship happens where life does. Now, this is probably of the 4 that we're doing in the fall. This is the one that is the most discipleship centric, digital discipleship. This is probably the one that's the most general across the board, that we designed one conference for everybody. And so that's going to be September 17th. Information is available at missionary.digital. The website, missionary.digital. The second conference of the Digital Missionary Conference is, actually, this is the third one. The fourth one is a secret. I see what we did here. The third conference, October 1st, the European Digital Missionary Conference. We're in partnership with a European German missionary conference, Mission Alliance, and so we're excited about the European Digital Missionary Conference. This conference is going to be interesting. They're going to have like 10 or 11 TED Talks, like 11 or 12 minute TED Talks. Boom, 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 rapid fire. Excited about how this one's going to be coming out with the European Digital Missionary Summit. The third summit that we're doing, actually it's the last one, time-wise, October 8th is the Digital Missionary Gaming Summit. Now, this one we're actually hosting in Discord. Excited about this one, but it's a gaming summit and designed for people that are doing ministry in and around gaming spaces. So Twitch, Discord, inside video games, even some metaverse VR stuff's going to be happening in this one. And so we've got neighborhoods. Second, we've got European. Third, we've got the gaming. Now, we had announced those three previously. Jeff, there's nothing new here. I know. Be patient. The next one, this is the new one. We had not previously announced this one yet, and this is going back to September 24th. We are doing a Christ-centered recovery, a digital recovery conference, creatively titled Control, Art, Recover. I'm going to be honest, that was ChatGPT. Let's give credit where credit is due. ChatGPT is a freaking genius. Yes, it will take over the world one day. Yes, but we're going to enjoy the time leading up to that as much as we can. All right, so we are doing a conference centered around, honestly, the necessity for recovery in digital spaces. And, well, if we're going to shine light into the darkness of digital, we need to be prepared to shine that light on ourselves. And so recovery is not just for people with addictions. It is really for all of us. And at a personal level, I can tell you that it is highlighted, that it is magnified, that it is amplified my ministry after going through that and resolving some of the issues some of the baggage that I've carried in my own weight. And so we are doing, in my own life, we're doing 4 conferences overall. First off, September 17th is going to be the Digital Neighborhoods Conference. September 24th, Wednesday, Recovery Conference. Third is going to be the European Conference, and fourth is going to be the Digital Gaming Conference, Digital Missionary Gaming Summit. Yeah, that's all I got commercial-wise. I told you, people have been wanting me to say this for a while. Even my own team were excited putting this together. We have been busy booking people from all sides of the planet, Europe to South Africa to California to, I'm trying to find somebody out in Singapore to book in to get the Asia Pacific islands. And hey, for the stream today, we're bringing in someone from Oceania, and so excited for this. So let me tell you what, let me push the button and bring everybody on. But let me set up how we ended up here. By the way, Alan Hirsch, thank you for joining us once again. Jesse Carbo is no stranger to theChurch.digital, founder of Digital Missions Project. Missions is singular or plural?
It's plural.
Plural. Digital Missions Project, and is on the board of theChurch.digital as well. So excited to have both of you all on today. Now, Jesse started was writing an article for Missio Nexus that actually got published maybe a month ago. Missio Alliance, I'm sorry. And it got published a month ago. Yep. Jesse, maybe you want to highlight that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, Missio Alliance. You can find them at missioalliance.org. And we wrote an article called Beyond Twitch, Incarnational Ministry in Everyday Digital Spaces. Really just talking about, can you do incarnational ministry in the digital space? And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation with true missiologist here with us from Australia.
Yeah, so what I really found out is while talking to Jesse about that article, the more that I was like, oh my gosh, I really wish we could get Alan Hirsch and ask him a couple questions about this. And so we did. And so really wanted to invite Alan to come on and start to talk to us a little bit as a Alan, I can call you a digital supporter. I don't want to put words in your mouth there, right?
Yeah, sure. I certainly support this. I do not claim any speciality in it. I follow at a bit of a distance, somewhat amazed at what's going on, but certainly I think we need to explore this whole field. So you're very much a supporter.
I love this. And so a digital friendly guy who understands incarnational ministry, let's bring him in and let's start to maybe pull back some of the curtains here and get a better understanding. But hey, I don't want to assume anything because I'll be honest. And I'm not kidding. I don't think I really understood what Jesse meant when he said incarnational ministry until I said, "Hey Jesse, when you say incarnational ministry, what do you mean?" So Alan, the missiologist that you are, in less than, I don't know, 2 million words, what exactly do we mean when we say incarnational ministry?
Yeah, Jeff, you picked up on the fact that I call myself the Lord of the long answer, right? So in less than 2 million words, I think I can
Yeah,
do
I
that.
mean, I've got a counter over here, so talk slowly.
Yes, well, talk slowly. No, I'll go as quickly as I can. Well, incarnational ministry essentially is a form of mission engagement with the world that models on what God has done in Jesus Christ in becoming a human being. So when we talk about the incarnation of the Son of God and the incarnation of the Logos, whatever, that we I mean, it's a remarkable act, right? So like here we have the reality of the eternal God, the maker of worlds with words, who speaks the universe into being, is eternally present, actually becomes one of us and is in the neighborhood for 30 years. And no one even noticed, right? No one figured it out. Hey, the person who created the universe is, right there in my neighborhood. In fact, they mostly missed it. And even his disciples don't get it until much, much later in the game, right? Who they're dealing with here. And so there's something about the hiddenness of God in the human or in the ordinary that is kind of played out here. And I often, so in Forgotten Ways, I play it out this way, that I talk about the 6 P's. This is a way of trying to frame the incarnation and then translate the incarnation into our mission, incarnational mission. So first, let's look at the incarnation. You look at Jesus, would you discover that Jesus became one of us, is present. I talk about presence in the neighborhood. The reality that in Jesus, God became fully and wholly present within human existence, right? So that's the first one. Presence is fully present to us. Proximity, it's kind of similar to presence, but is in not only in the neighborhood. He's not only a human, but he's in the neighborhood, but he's also involved where other people are. So he's in the marketplaces, the pubs, in the streets, where people are. He's in proximity to them. And this will relate a little bit to maybe when we talk about this, in third places and fourth places, engaging in those kind of spaces. Other one we say is powerless, that he comes not as the kind of conquering king, but as a kind of suffering servant. And this also says a lot about the incarnation, the kenosis we talk about in theology of the self-emptying of the Son of God. Powerless, prevenience. This is an interesting one. When Jesus says, "I only do what I see the Father doing," is recognizing that God's already gone ahead, and he attempts to pay attention to what God's doing and do what God does, right? And this is really important, in our going into kind of areas where we're unclear of what's going on. We just find out what God's doing and join with him. Proclamation, that's the one we proclaim the gospel. Jesus did, proclaim the kingdom. But it usually this plays out very well once you've done the other ones. Once you've actually established credibility, presence, seen what God is doing and you're acknowledging it. The only other one I would add is passion, and my wife added this into the equation. She talks about the incarnation of the heart, where we engage sympathetically with the pathos or the suffering or the anxiety of the human situation and condition. So, where we feel what God feels. And these are all based on what Jesus experiences, the 6 P's, but they translate into incarnational mission as well. So we follow, we do the same thing. We need to be present in the neighborhood. We need to be in proximity with people, be in contact with them. We find out what God's doing. We proclaim the gospel and the kingdom. And we feel what others feel. We have an incarnation heart. So yeah, that's broadly the way I kind of talk about it, at least in one of my books called Forgotten Ways. That makes
So,
sense?
no, totally. And even with the accent, like just once again, I'm hearing very smart words: empathy, proximity, presence, eternal. This is it's a rich picture. I think that you're painting here. But a lot of this, like the presence, the proximity, um, often it's perceived to be missing in digital, or it's the absence of it. Digital is the cheap version of it. I cannot be with you in person, and so instead I will FaceTime you. I cannot be with you in person, so I am going to write this email instead. I would love to maybe just dialogue some with you, just even like a shooting from the hip. What is the role of digital? What is the what part does it play in a incarnational ministry, in an incarnational relationship? What should digital be for this?
Well, Jeff, I can't. I mean, I can't, like I said, speak as an expert in digital. I'm not, but I am aware, and I've spent a lot of time trying to think about the role of technology in our lives, and the digital space, VR kind of spaces that you're often engaged in, are simply expressions of how technology impacts us. For instance, I mean, like 100 years ago, whenever the phone was invented, it creates the same conditions, maybe at less impact, but when people at a distance can talk to each other, and this that already starts the process of depersonalizing to some degree, which can be problematic, but we have somehow managed to kind of integrate it pretty well. And in fact, I think telephones and cell phones, etc., now are actually ways in which we keep in touch with each other, and probably have a more relational connection than simply what was before that was letters, which is another technology, if you will, that was used much slower and also deeper, not personal, but yet personal, But I just think playing that out, I think digital is an example of that, but taken at a whole different level. And there are problems in it. I think we need to be very clear, but there are also opportunities presenting to us, and actually challenges which we as Christians who have got an obligation to be present in all spaces where people are. When we follow the Incarnation, we say, well, what would Jesus do here? I mean, what's the Incarnation mean in the digital space? I think we have to be present, have to have proximity. We need to kind of feel to engage where people are at, to feel what they're feeling, to humanize them, to bring dignity, to bring good news in those kind of spaces. So I think it's a very much it's a good challenge for us, and I think you guys are doing a good job.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I think,
Jesse.
Alan, a good follow-up question would be: would Jesus use digital?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm much more engaged with AI, and the same question might come about with that. The way I actually think about AI, it's going to be, as I think Jeff has already said, it's going to rule us entirely. But when you see this in a broader context, AI is not God, even though it's going to pretend to be omniscient and omnipresent. It's going to actually be highly problematic in that regard, because it displaces God in a lot of people's lives. You're going to turn to AI for all your answers, not to prayer. That's going to be an issue, no question about it. But God's still sovereign. AI isn't independent reality, and even if it was, God is still a Lord over all things. So it fits within God's overall frame and in His purposes. It's not that He's surprised. Oops, they created AI. I think He knows what's going on. but it doesn't mean it's not going to cause great confusion and complexity for us down below here. And I think the same is digital. I mean, would he use it? Yeah, I think it's a created form. I think he would. But I do think there might be a challenge there to constantly remember that actually embodied relationships. You couldn't have a marriage online, could you? I mean, you could head in that direction, but you couldn't really. You certainly couldn't make babies, and don't think about that too much online. Which kind of shows you, like, somewhere along the line that ultimately these things are personal.
Yeah.
And relationships are deeply personal and embodied experiences. I think that might be just to keep it. It's not ultimately real, but it's definitely real, but not perfect.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It has its limitations. Digital, like a lot of things in life, there are limitations to its use, and to its use case, right? And using the phone analogy, and I think I would even want to go back and say that even if we take digital off the table, when we talk about incarnational ministry and we look at ministry leaders, church leaders, I think that's a struggle for a lot of pastors to even live it out. Even if you take digital off the table, and we're not trying to figure out like what's the digital solution. Many pastors that even myself, when I pastored for 25 plus years, like the temptation to shut the door to my office at the church building and be totally unaware of what's happening in the neighborhood, right? And expect people in my church to invite people to this gathering on Sunday morning and consider that ministry, and all I do is preach and maybe counsel during the week. And we really miss the picture of what it means to be incarnational. And so going to your phone analogy, I can use the telephone to promote my product, or I can use the phone to be present and to listen and to connect and to build a relationship.
Yep.
Right. And so it's really about, the question isn't so much for me, would Jesus use it, but how would he use it? How would he use technology to be present in people's lives, to bring truth, to bring the gospel, to build relationship? And I think that's the real, like, if we really get down to it, like the church right now in the West, like we're introducing the technology is just moving so fast. Like, I think, you were saying you don't want to be a self-proclaimed expert. I don't either, because I don't think Jeff does either, because technology is moving so fast and changing so much. I mean, I'm the generation that the internet, started, and I tell my kids, my youngest is 17, and I'm like, oh baby, I remember when internet was, that dial-up modem, and you had to wait 10 minutes before it was ready to use, it had to warm up, and it had all these weird sounds. And she has no idea. I mean, she has to watch a YouTube video to kind of see what that was like, and technology just moves so fast. So I think there's an incredible opportunity for us to help encourage pastors to think more like missionaries today.
Mm.
I'm even though I have an organization called the Digital Missions Project, it really is a project because a lot of my conversations really are coaching and encouraging pastors to really think about intention. Like, what is the intention behind your ministry, and how do you live that out? Even with digital off the table, forget about digital. Like how do you live that out? Like, do you know what's going on down the street? Do you know your neighbors? Like, I'm in a church office here, and this church has an issue with, like, they don't even know who their neighbors are. They have the same people that have been coming here for the last 40 years, and that's it. And hopefully with this new pastor they just got, there'll be some revitalization work, and they got to knock on the doors and get to know the people that live here. So yeah.
Oh, I think that's very, very, very useful and a very good comment. And I do think, we can be highly disincarnated in ordinary ministry. So, any any criticism we might put into kind of issues of digital. I mean, it applies all around, as you've well stated. But the other, I think that in your article, you said as well, which I think is a really good point, is that not to simply use the digital space as a place for marketing or selling something, but for actual being present to people that are there, and having regularity in that, being there for them, listening, humanizing, like I said, properly, rather than simply using, internet as a kind of way of kind of getting your ideas out. I think it was a useful comment too, bro.
Yeah. I think 99% of churches right now in the West, the way that they use digital is really just a marketing tool. They're
Platform.
blasting it's a platform. They're just blasting information about their events, the next thing that's coming up, and they're not having conversations. They're not engaging. I remember one time I was at a pastor's retreat, maybe about a year ago, last September, and we were talking about this digital, and this pastor, new church planner from Los Angeles, he said to me, he goes, "Man, I want to use digital and social media, but I don't want to be a TikTok dancing pastor." Like, in his mind, the way to use technology is that he had to be like one of these TikTok dancing pastors. And I said, no, not at all. Like, he's like, well, how would you, like, what would I do? And I said, well, here's a thought. Like, do you use WhatsApp? He's like, oh yeah, every day. Do the people in your church use WhatsApp? Okay. What if you said that on Sunday, if you preach your sermon on Sunday morning, what if on Sunday evening you said you were going to be on WhatsApp for an hour answering questions and having dialogue and conversation about the sermon that morning? I mean, this was like a mind-blown moment for this guy. He left there, goes, man, I'm going to do that. That's so simple. I don't got to be a TikTok. I'm like, technology can be used in meaningful ways to build relationships and engage people and take people further. But we just haven't, I think part of the reason why we haven't thought about how to do that digitally is because we're not even doing that physically. Like in the IRL, right? In real life, we're struggling even there.
Yep.
Do you think your TikTok pastor, your TikTok dancing pastor, Jesse, if he had 1 hour a week to give, would he rather do like that, be available in physical space, or be available like that digitally?
I don't know. I don't know if he would rather be available physically or digitally, but here's what I do know. Culturally, people are less and less willing to do things physically because of busyness, calendar competition. People just have so much on their plate, and because of the ability of digital technology, right? People are just, I mean, look at the trend of church attendance. It's in decline.
Yeah.
What's not in decline is the number of people that are following Christian content online. Like, there's a movement of young people that are coming to Jesus because of Christian influencers online. So it's not that people are disinterested in Christianity, Jesus, spiritual truth. People are more guarded about what they commit to physically, participating in. Right. So I don't know if the pastor, he might say, yeah, I'm willing to get together with people physically. My point is that, like, if you live in a community where people aren't willing to get together physically, then how do you reach them?
Yeah.
How do you disciple people who are less commit? Like Jeff, you and I live in Miami. That culturally here in Miami, people are very non-committal. When I led the network here for 8 years, we would invite hundreds and hundreds of pastors to come to events, and I would get all these, yes, we'll be there. But it was always like, it's more like I'm saying yes, just in case I don't have something better to do. So what do you do in that situation? Like, yeah, you want to challenge people and encourage people. There's times, like, you can't make babies digitally. You got to get together in person. So there's times when you have to challenge and push for that physical connection and get in person. But then the question is, like, how can we think creatively about using technology in a way that creates the room for us to have discipleship oriented conversations, and not discipleship oriented. When I say discipleship, I'm talking about not just spewing content out at people that they would consume, but conversations that motivate people and encourage people towards obedience of the lordship of Jesus.
Yeah. Alan, maybe you can help me with this. It's funny. We've used you were talking earlier about even the having babies. You can't do that physically or can't do that digitally. I'm not going to prove you can. But I would say that there's a conception, a perception that I'm totally confused now. But there's a perception that a lot of humanity is lost digitally. Like even that's the knock on ChatGPT is the more that we use AI, the more that we lose our humanity. And oftentimes I have found, this is non-scientific study here, but the converse is true as well. That digital is a tool that actually can allow you to engage relationally. It can be used as a communications tool, but it is also a very powerful tool towards being able to be in presence with one another. When my wife and I were in college 25 years ago, we were paying Ma Bell 10 cents a minute to talk on the phone cross country. And now, we can pick up any device and I can be looking at her for free, essentially. And so, like, technology is moving and is overcoming some of that human traits that was once lost, or that has taken a while to really start to understand. What do you say to a pastor? You don't delve much with the technology, but when you talk with people that are very locked into a way of doing church, so much of what you're doing is even on that outskirts of new norms and an established kind of challenging the established norm, so to speak. How do you help them try to see something different? How do you coach them, walk with them? What do those conversations with you normally look like?
That's a good question. I would just make a comment just briefly before I get to that about I found this very medium or Zoom. You think about I know that you're in Florida, you didn't experience COVID and all that stuff, but the rest of the world did. We were living in New York where it was getting really quite hectic, so we actually left to go back home with family, and then almost up, what was it, 2.5-3 years of kind of messy kind of life, lockdowns. We were in the most lockdown city in the world, in Melbourne here in Australia, but Zoom, and I realized, this was the way I kept connected, and in fact it's a very useful way of being connected with a lot more people than I could normally be, and it's kind of pretty much free. And secondly, I don't have to travel, so I'm saving on all kinds of technologicals and producing too much kind of carbon emissions, etc. So no, I think there are a lot of really, really good things in technology, but in terms of people looking at things differently, one of the things because we deal with a lot of people, helping them think about church in a different frame. So often people think of church in the legacy model as a building. I've kind of picture it like this. It's got steeple. It's always got a steeple, got pews, all that stuff in it. That's what the church is, and helping people think differently about that. You often have to help them to go on an unlearning journey. In order to learn new things, you have to unlearn things that are kind of holding to a certain paradigm. So actually, I've developed a process of that called the metanoia curve, the metanoia journey, Metanoia means paradigm shift, by the way, and it's a biblical word for repent. Well, repentance is a very bad translation, actually. You translate metanoia, meta, you know what that is, don't you? Meta is beyond over. Noia is your thinking, or nous is your mind, so you're thinking, what comes out of your mind. So thinking fundamentally differently to the way you're thinking now. So in other words, experiencing paradigm shift. And this is cooked into biblical spirituality. We're meant to have an ongoing experience of this. I would argue any move towards God requires it, because God's ever greater. God's going to always blow your mind, right? You can never put God in a box. If you put God in a box, you got to repent. It's called idolatry. And it's not God that you've got in the box, and your little doctrinal boxes and all that. So the idea of always having your mind blown, willing to think differently, is absolutely a critical part of biblical spirituality, actually. And you're never going to learn about anything without unlearning stuff that got you to the point where you are now. So that's kind of the thing we take very, very seriously in whatever you're grappling with. In order to learn something new, radically new, what are you willing to unlearn first? Because sometimes our commitments to past traditions or ways of thinking limit our capacity to engage what God is doing in the current moment. So being open to the present means being open to having your mind blown and to learn again. Yeah.
So we're using digital beyond a communications tool. We're not just selling something with this, but if we're leaning into creating community, if we're developing, using this technology for presence, to reinforce proximity, to maybe engage with people, using this technology as an on-ramp. Maybe there are people that are more digitally friendly that we want to engage with in that way before we get to engaging them into a physical space. Is this what I'm hearing from the group, from the two of you, as we're talking about the role of digital in Incarnational?
Jesse, I think you've got this, brother.
What are you feeling
Yeah,
on that, bro?
So my ADHD just went into hyperdrive because he said something about unlearning, and now I can't help but I'm just been processing this idea of with technology, it's always forward movement. It's always learning something new. And then you just presented this idea of metanoia and how we have to unlearn. And it's got me processing, how do you help in a culture where everything's about learning? Think about all the pastor conferences that are out there. Pastors there's so many conferences, and we want to learn what's the next thing to get better, more efficient, more effective, reach more people, grow, get bigger. And then you're saying, for us to be able to do this, we actually have to unlearn. That seems almost impossible or incredibly difficult.
Yeah. It is very difficult. And changing a system it takes real commitment. But sometimes circumstances kind of force us into that. So again, I lament this, friends, what COVID had the opportunity of teaching us is about decentralized forms of ecclesia. In smaller, more reproducible, homegrown, local owned kind of version of ecclesia, networked as a movement. It was a fantastic opportunity for the church to unlearn and relearn, and to find a new and far more productive, less expensive way of doing church. But hell no, we're not going to go there, so we double down. And for most churches, it's gone back to the standard form because that's all they knew. And it's partly because people weren't willing to let go of prior ideas that they deeply invested in. How to get someone to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it. And often the leaders are the ones most vested in the prevailing system. So actually winning them over is a difficult thing. But I would like to think that the kingdom of God ought to challenge us, to constant unlearning and constant growth. And not sitting with kind of prevailing forms of church that for us largely was settled in the 16th century. We're not even living there now. Why would we insist on running churches like in 16th or 18th? Depends on your tradition, right? If you're Catholic, it goes back even further. Why would we assume that the ecclesiology, which is, if the ecclesiology, idea of church is really not just a physical building, it's kind of a set of assumptions about how the church relates to the world and the purpose of the church in the world. And the way that we've normally conceived it is profoundly ineffective. It's not effective anymore. And it's incredibly expensive. So I know this because we've done research that in America, when you put the budgeting and the cost of running the church in America on an annual basis up against the conversion rates in America, it's $1.4 million per convert in America.
Wow.
1.4 million per convert.
Yeah.
You talk about an expensive system that's ineffective. I mean, that's a good enough reason to change.
Sorry.
But again, for us too, it's often bound up with the fact that we invested in this. So often it's a financial issue.
Yeah.
I need to get money for my family to get my
you're
kids
committed,
to
you're locked in.
Yeah. And so you're locked into a system like that. But we have to free ourselves as leaders from those kind of constraints in order to kind of lead the church into new ground. And I think, again, the digital, it could prove to be a really a wonderful way of actually investing our resources. Imagine if you put $1.4 million into your digital strategy. I think you'd get a few more converts if you did it well and you did it incarnationally. You'll get a few more converts than you would by running the standard system or currently run now. So,
Yeah. So are you saying, so I'm just curious, I want to go back because you said since COVID, it seems to you I feel like you have a pretty good pulse of the church landscape. I mean, I'm not assuming that you know about everything everywhere, but you're talking to network leaders, really on an international level. So you're saying your sense is that people have doubled down on the old way of doing church and are unwilling to do, and the only reason I'm asking is because from my perspective, which again is very limited compared to your perspective, like I'm friends with the guys over at the Tampa Underground, Casey Underground, those guys, they've been doing what they've been doing for so long. And all of a sudden post COVID, it seems like there's been this burst of people very interested in kind of a decentralized approach to ministry. That conversation has gained a lot of momentum from my perspective, again, which is very limited.
No, you're absolutely right, Jess. I think you are. But I would say the overwhelming, predominant kind of church has gone back to running Sunday services.
Yeah.
But now there are actually real, live, we call them proof of concept movements that are around now, and the microchurch movement being one of them, that are actually demonstrating another way. And that's the proof of concept idea is really important because it'll show us a new way of doing things. And by the way, just on that, fellas, another reason why you want to get this right is that when you think about church growth theory, well, it was a theory. It was brought by a guy called Donald McGavran, comes to Fuller Seminary, becomes a professor there, and he's a movement guy. He's bringing movement thinking from his experience. I think it was India, and but this is combined with marketing and management theory, with C. Peter Wagner and those dudes, and it becomes what they call church growth theory, contemporary church growth theory. No, it's a theory until two churches came along and gave proof of concept. They were called Willow Creek and Saddleback. No, I mean, there were more, but fundamentally those two took this idea and they created two different systems. They created huge platforms that prove that this is viable and it's a way to go. the rest of the church in the world went in the same direction. And so all you need to do is to have a few examples of these where it's really kind of working properly, theologically aligned and discerning your way properly. You do that and everyone's going to follow. And I think you might very well become one of those proof of concept organizations that we're looking for right now. You know?
Yeah, I
Does that make
agree.
sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I've had this conversation with Jeff many times, because, you know, not to put Jeff on the spot, but there's times when, you know, like anytime you lead an organization, there are moments when you feel like giving up because you don't know if it's worth it anymore. There's these moments of, is the word liminality, right? Like this tension, this like, is, you know, should I keep doing this? And then, you know, and I just keep saying to Jeff, like, because he's an early adopter. Like, he's a true early adopter. He's been doing digital ministry since how long, Jeff? Since 2000, maybe before that.
2000.
Like,
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
been a
And I'm
minute.
like, man, to me, the sense, at least in my gut, is that we are 1 to 2 years out before digital ministry breaks loose across the church globally, because, well, not even globally, in the West. I say not globally because, like, I'm connected to people that are doing things in the 1040 window, and that's the only way Christianity's growing in the 1040 window, is because of digital.
Yeah.
There are more converts that come to Christ because of digital tools, because they can't do it in person immediately. And so digital has become one of the mechanisms for allowing the movement of Christianity to grow in places where it's illegal. So, but yeah, I think, yeah, digital it's hard to adopt because they see it as a marketing tool to promote their products and services, when it really needs to be more. So yeah, that's the conversation we've been having, is like, yeah.
But guys, I think this way it becomes critically important to bring integrity to this practice online. I think the incarnational frame gives you a very good example of how you can maintain a Christ-like presence, not something that's manipulative or unchrist-like, which is, there's more than enough of that crap going around.
Yeah.
You know, but to actually commit yourselves to, you know, what does it mean to be a genuine Jesus-y presence online? And then working that out, which I think, again, you know, Jess, your article was very good, bro. And I would say, I think it still needs work. And I think guiding people, because I think most folks go on board and they're pragmatic, or they want to market or sell ideas and create their own platforms. We're seeing where that goes, right? And we see what social media can do. Every idiot's got a bloody pulpit now, haven't they? You know, and they just ranting. And I mean, I can't even follow X anymore. It's just vile, you know. But so we as Christians need to actually embody a very different way here. And I think the discipline of actually you guys actually laying down the template, the default mode that might follow, I think is very important to build in the kind of the character issues, maybe is a word,
Yeah.
or the kind of a good ethical approach to what does it mean to engage online. Also kind of an awareness of technology and how it changes us. We invent our tools and then they reinvent us. Social media is a classic example. It's caused all kinds of things in the world because people weren't aware of it. So bring awareness, bring thoughtful approaches to this, you know, in your pioneering or apostolic work and what you're doing now. Very, very important. You're laying down the template.
Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, I mean, you're talking language like, you know, like the pioneering work that needs to be done. And in some ways it feels like, well, a lot of this technology has been around for a while, but it's still so new and there's still so much to figure out and it moves so rapidly. Yeah. And I think, we need to invite God's Spirit in this process to help guide. Yeah, because there's things we're going to get wrong.
Yeah. The other thing I would also challenge again is something to really think about. Is I'm Jess, you would know this particularly. I'm very big on movement, so that's my shtick, right? Idea of getting things that can scale and have large impact, over time and distance. And I think the kind of digital world gives us incredible options there to actually start movements of common concern, or Jesus movements, discipleship. What does that look like online? Building that out. Each of these become clearer as you build it out. But the idea of movements and getting an idea to spread, Jesus' idea to spread virally, I think is something we need to put our minds to. And again, with some sort of ethical guidelines to it as well.
Yeah. It's really good. Really, really good.
So, for me, it's been, by the way, if there's questions in the audience, Kiwi's having like a side conversation as Kiwi normally does when he's on these things. It's a lot of fun to see.
He's a genius. He should be on here.
Yeah, Meta, she should. Yeah, he can take my spot. That'd be awesome. Metanoia. You wrote the book back in 22, 23? Published it?
22, 23, somewhere
in there.
Somewhere there, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that in the past. And coming from a guy who's been doing digital ministry since the 2000s, like it's literally, I launched my first online community April 15, 2000. Oftentimes I've been told no, it doesn't work that way. Like literally the same argument for 25 years. No, it doesn't work that way. And it centers around the church's use of digital community. That the church should not use digital community. Digital community is, is the bastard child of physical community. There's no God doesn't belong in that space. You can look at my YouTube comments centered around virtual reality, and find lots of people that think that the devil is in these digital and virtual spaces. Yet we're finding that God is moving, and that people are finding Christ and are being discipled in amongst these spaces. Atheists are coming to Christ. Agnostics are discovering Jesus. Unchurched are re-engaging and even evangelizing and discipling others. And this is not once again, this is the forgetting, the unlearning portion of it. It's not a broadcast model. It's a conversational, it's a relational evangelism model, relational discipleship model, and it's picking up steam. We're still young with this approach.
It is a true missionary model. It is going to where the people are at.
Yeah,
and
I
where
guess
they're
that's
at
really the
online.
question. We've really pushed this idea of platforms as places, that we look at Twitch, the platform of Twitch, the community around Twitch, the community of Discord, the community of VR chat, the community of Facebook, in many of the same ways that a normal missions agency would look at India, China, Brazil, and in that way, like forcing this digital community as a community worthy of a church mindset, and that has been well received by some and not well received by others. I would love, if I could, maybe just a little bit of your time here. Let's, for sake of argument, let's flip the script here a little bit on incarnational ministry. Alan, you're usually good at thinking on your feet here. Incarnational usually would be micro. I'm existing in the neighborhood. I have a presence in the neighborhood. There's a proximity relationship to that, and that's where it is. And yes, we can use digital as a way to complement that proximity to get people in where they're not, or things like that. typically where I rewrite the script, flip the script, and try to do the unlearnings, and this is where it's been a little hard as of late, is as platforms as places, where now I'm saying that in Discord as it is in the neighborhood, and Discord is the neighborhood as well. What are some of the opportunities or constructive challenges of putting platforms as neighborhoods, if we're looking at incarnational ministry in these spaces? What are some of the challenges or opportunities we may be seeing?
Well, I think we've already covered a few of them. I think like going back to the issue of marriage, which is maybe one of the ultimate forms of human love, and ultimately, we human beings probably do need physical contact. I wouldn't say that it's either or. I would simply say I think it's a legitimate space to engage, and for some people this is where they could go to church. I think it's quite clear. And the fact is, I mean, like the prevailing churches might critique it, but it's not that most churches are great places to belong either. You go there, you get basically preached at, or you get some sort of religious experience, but they're limited.
Yeah.
So they can be kind of inauthentic in themselves. So the same
if it is, it's Jay Cranda over. It's so funny. You talk about Saddleback. Jay Cranda, digital pastor over at Saddleback. Anytime he sees me, he's like, it's talking about incarnational. Well, yeah, but you can't have sex digitally. Well, I mean, technically you probably could, but that's not a good thing. We don't want to get it too deep into that. But the Bible, ironically, Paul talks about being single, and then there's the flip side towards a lot of this, and so there are people that live without that, and I do not believe physical or digital. Like it's both. I'm not saying it's hybrid. I don't want to use that term in that, but there's physical selves and there's digital selves in that, where there's a proximity towards it, but towards both sides of it. Do you see where there's an opportunity to build relationships that exist only in digital space?
I think there will be situations where that is the case. Again, I don't know enough about it, but I think like there are some problems related to that. With some of the Japanese kids who are going to do gaming and don't leave their rooms for 23 hours or something like that, and I think there will be unintended effects of going all out in any technology. We invent our tools; they have an unintended reciprocal effect on us. Not all of them healthy. AI is going to be a classic case in point. It's a big one, bigger than digital proper, because it displaces human intelligence, and it does a cracker job of it. And it doesn't matter whether the theoreticians tell us it doesn't think like a human. I said it doesn't matter. But 99% of people are going to treat it like it's God.
Yeah.
So
we're going to be thinking like it will, not it thinking like we will at some point. It's going to.
We're going to sound smarter, but we're going to be dumber, because we won't do much thinking for ourselves anymore. And that, in the long run, I don't think is good for us. So we need to be aware that technology does have a reciprocal effect, and that we need to just be aware of it when we inflict it upon other people, just to try and predict that. Again, we couldn't have predicted this with social media, but it has changed things, and the whole anxious generation stuff, and kids now just almost completely posing for the camera. It's changed things. It had a huge impact on society, and not all of it good. Some of it's very good. I just think we need to think both ways about it and be, I think, a wholesale engagement with it. You just got to be critically aware. good and evil in all things, and we need to have discernment of spirits.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
What, did we
that's
solve the
really
world's
good.
problems tonight?
Hopefully we made people think a little more deeply about it.
Yeah. What it's the other side of the planet where Alan's at, so it's Thursday morning
It's the
where he
future.
is. So the future does exist. We do make it to that point,
Yes,
at least.
that's another kind of weird.
Any I don't want to take up too much more of Alan's time, but closing thoughts, Jesse, as we're wrapping up here. Anything on your side?
No, I'm super grateful for you, Alan. You've had such a profound impact on the church at large and in my life. And, we started a network here in Miami. And I remember we started this gospel leadership network. And I remember you challenged me. You said, you should call it the Jesus Leadership Network. And your challenge really like knocked me back. And I was like, I was so gung because I was part of this like young and reformed group of guys. And it was like gospel leadership. And you challenged me, and I was like, later I look back and I'm like, yeah, Alan was right. I should have changed the name right away. Like on that day, I should have changed the name, and wish I had, but I didn't. And then you and I had a chance pre-COVID. I think it was the fall of 2019 to go to Cuba and train some church planners. And I thought about this because we were talking about incarnational ministry, and we met with that Cuban actor and got to share the story of the prodigal son. And he was so, a self-acknowledged agnostic, who basically was like, I don't believe in God, but he loves Pachi, and he just wanted to like be with us at dinner. And I just remember you and Robert and Pachi sharing the story of the prodigal son with him. And he was so blown away. And I just kept looking around, and I'm like, what am I doing at this table? Like, I shouldn't be here. Like, this is somebody snuck me in, maybe they don't see me over here, but I'm just grateful for you, and thank you for everything. Yeah,
thank you, Jess. I feel the same way, bro. What am I doing at the table? Honestly, and I often find myself pinching myself, thinking, oh my gosh,
well,
I could never.
It's probably because Deb lets you be at the table, because she's really she's the best one. She's the best one. She's amazing.
Yeah, it's all about the women giving the men permission to be at the table.
Every man marries up. That's something we can certainly agree on.
100%.
Women are best.
Awesome.
Hey, Alan, as we're wrapping up, any closing thoughts on your side tonight?
No, I guys, just keep going. I pray for you, rooting for you. I think what you're doing is absolutely critical. Let's keep the journey going. But yeah, and just stay centered on Jesus, like Jess was saying.
Love it. Well, I tell you what, Kiwis,
you can't go wrong if you become more like Jesus. So just stay close. You'll be good.
That's good.
All right, Kiwi's got a question. We'll ask Alan as we wrap up here. How will our effortless and daily connections digitally affect the way we understand the role of the church?
I think he's got to answer that.
Isn't that normally what he does? It's like he pokes the bear with the question a little bit, knowing that he's got like the right hook ready to swing. Anything you want to share here?
I think what he's saying is, we clearly engage digitally all the time, including what we're doing now. These things are already part of what we're doing. How do they affect us as the church? Well, I think they do play a role. I know we need to, again, be very aware of it and enhance it and be more Jesus-y in our use of these things. But but they do. Technology impacts us in so many ways, and we're entering into a technologically defined reality. I actually think that there will be, I predict this, there will be pre-AI and post-AI, like BC, DC, ACDC. But I think if we kind of survive the 21st century, they will kind of mark it as a kind of an epoch difference.
Wow.
So all that to say, because I think everything changes now from this point.
Yeah. You just did say, if we survive the 21st century, Like I want to draw attention. You did put an if in there, right?
Yeah, I did put an
Okay,
if in
all
there.
right, all right. I wasn't
You
sure if
want me
it
to
broke
explain?
broke up in my ears. Just wanted to
That's
make sure we're
another
good.
podcast. That's a whole
That's
nother
a whole
That
podcast.
is
other
another
stream.
one. It's I have all kinds of thinking about what's going on in the
No,
world.
but the post the AI as the timestamp, the labeler,
Well, I
is
think that will be
beautiful.
the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it'd be interesting as you know BCAC, before Christ Anno Domini. Maybe that gets replaced in time.
Well, it might be supplemented, but I do think we're going to see the world as before. It's like we can even say internet was just a resourcing information for us.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
unbelievable, but it didn't do our thinking for us.
Right.
AI actually goes into the very core of human
Yeah.
consciousness. The language goes to the very center of how
Yeah.
we think.
The internet
how we
distributed
ideas.
us. It didn't replace us. AI has the ability to
AI,
replace.
yeah, that's right.
No, I get you. That's interesting. Well, I'll reach out to you in 12 to 14 months, and we'll have that conversation then.
If we're still around.
If we're still around, there's no promise. All right, so we're gonna land the plane for Jesse, for Alan. This is Jeff at theChurch.digital for a special Wednesday stream. Thanks for hanging out with us today, everybody, and we'll see you next time on the show. Y'all have a good one.
Have a good one.